I recently read Steven Bartlett's new book, The 33 Laws of Life and Business, so I thought I'd share with you the 9 rules that are helping me to live my best life. Firstly, sweat the small stuff. So the biggest way for us to achieve big things is to focus obsessively on the small things that most people would dismiss as trivial, crazy, or a waste of time. Whether we're a top chef devoting significant effort into balancing flavours, textures and presentation, or if we're a student that's just taking meticulous notes and crafting the perfect revision plan, there's just so much that can be gained from focusing in on the details. It's an idea that's also closely related to the idea of Kaizen, which is a Japanese term meaning continuous improvement. Basically, innovation is seen as a kind of an incremental process. Like, it's not a big leap forward, but rather it's about making small things better in small ways everywhere you can, every single day. But sweating the small things like this is super tough, and it's really easy for us to overlook the importance of Kaizen philosophy, because whenever we see small things, we just see it as that, a small thing. In fact, the things that are really easy to do are annoyingly also really easy to not do. Like, for example, it's easy for me to save $1, but it's also really easy for me to spend $1. Or it's like really easy for me to brush my teeth, but it's also annoyingly easy for me to not brush my teeth. Part of the problem then is that the impact of not doing these supposedly trivial tasks is virtually invisible in the short run. But in the long run, the difference between letting something worsen by 1% daily and letting that thing improve by 1% daily is staggering. For example, if we start the year with $100 and the value of that $100 increases by 1% every day for 365 days, by the end of the year, the value of the $100 would have increased by 37 times. Then, over the course of a decade, assuming that same 1% daily incremental improvement in the value of that pot, we will have a staggering $15 quadrillion. Secondly, a small miss now creates a big miss later. So in aviation, there's this principle called the 1 in 60 rule, which means that if a plane is off target by just 1 degree, that means that it's going to miss its end destination by 1 mile for every 60 miles it flies. This same concept also applies to our lives, our relationships, our careers, and our personal growth. Just a small deviation from our optimal path is going to be amplified over time and distance. Just a small miss now is going to lead to a huge miss later. This highlights the need for the real-time course corrections and adjustments that the Kaizen philosophy provides. Like, if we want to be successful, whatever that means for us, we need rituals in place to assess our course and to make very small minor adjustments every single day to make sure we're on target for where we want to go. Thirdly, outfail the competition. So if you want to increase the chances of success, you must increase your failure rate. There's actually this really interesting story about this dude called Thomas J. Watson, who was the president of IBM for 38 years and also one of the richest men of his time. And essentially, he was in a position where a dude in this company had made a mistake that cost the company $600,000. So people were asking him, like, are you going to fire this dude? Are you going to get rid of him? Like, why would you have this person working for you when he made such a catastrophic mistake? And his response was, no. Like, I've just spent $600,000 training him, so why would I let someone else hire him with that experience? The point of this story is that Watson didn't see the failure as this catastrophic failure. He saw it as a really important learning opportunity. And you see, when we reframe setbacks as learning opportunities, we can begin to cultivate an environment where innovation can flourish and also a sense of resilience. So this is exactly what we need to do with our own lives. So if we're the sort of person that spends forever trying to make the perfect decision, we're kind of wasting our time. You see, the perfect decision only ever happens in hindsight, and big wins come from making lots of small decisions and experimenting every single day. Every time something is tried and found not to work, value information is gained and we get closer to succeeding. Fourthly, become a plan A thinker. So when deciding what career to have, when we're choosing what university to apply to, or even deciding what hobbies we should invest our time into, having a backup plan is widely thought to be a good idea. But studies have shown that while having a plan B can help with some of the mental discomfort that comes with the uncertainty of life, it comes at a pretty big cost. Across 3 studies, almost 500 students were asked to solve difficult word puzzles that involved unscrambling kind of jumbled sentences. And if they were successful, they were going to be given a tasty snack. Now, before they started the study, they told some of the groups to think of a backup plan, like another way that they could get a free tasty snack on campus should they be unsuccessful in solving the task. The researchers eventually found that those groups that didn't have a plan B were far more successful than those that did. They had high levels of motivation, they valued success more, and they completed more of the puzzle. And these findings have been replicated across multiple new studies since. So the takeaway then is that the more of ourselves we put into something, the more likely we are to see the results we want. Number 5, don't be an ostrich. So when an ostrich senses danger, it kind of just buries its head into the sand as if ignoring the threat will make it disappear. And the funny thing is, we aren't all that different. Confronted with tough information, unsettling situations, or a challenging conversation, we often just act like the ostrich does and bury our head into the metaphorical sand. And the reason we do this is because we are hardwired to avoid any feelings of discomfort. For example, when we've overspent, many of us will refuse to look at our bank accounts as if not looking is going to help the situation. Or when we know something isn't quite right with our health, we'll delay going to the doctor or the dentist because we kind of fear what we're going to find out. So if this sounds like you, there's actually a 4-step framework you can use to keep your head above the sand. So step 1 is to pause and admit to ourselves that something isn't right. Then step 2 is to review our thoughts, behaviours and emotions. This self-review is all about putting into words what we've already sensed, that something is misaligned, a need is unmet and a fear is taking control. Then step 3 is to speak the truth. That means opening up to someone and not passing on the blame to anyone or anything. And then finally in step 4, we want to seek the truth. That is listening to other people's advice without trying to challenge what they're saying. The key is to understand what's going wrong, evaluate our options, and then come up with some tangible next steps, however challenging that may be. Number 6, pressure is a privilege. Billie Jean King is this super famous tennis player, or at least she was. She has 39 Grand Slam titles, including 20 Wimbledon titles to her name. Every time she played tennis, literally the whole tennis world would watch her play. Every sports writer was ready to criticise her every move, and she was almost expected to win every time she rocked up to a tennis court. It was a level of pressure that might have been too much for pretty much anyone else, but not her. When asked about how she handles all this pressure, she had a pretty cool answer. She said, "Pressure is a privilege. It only comes to those who earn it." The idea is that pressure isn't necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it's a sign showing that we're doing something important, something that's worth caring about. We don't feel pressure about stuff that doesn't matter, but rather about stuff that does. Maybe it's a big career-defining opportunity, maybe it's a huge family responsibility, or perhaps it's a performance on a public stage. This is a privilege. It's an indicator that we're trusted with a meaningful task and considered capable enough to deliver. This sense of positive privilege invites a reframing of pressure as an opportunity rather than a burden. Like the pressure of public speaking comes with the privilege of having a platform where people want to hear your views and opinions. The pressure of leadership comes with the privilege of mentorship, where you're helping people to improve their lives and careers. And the pressure of competition comes with the privilege of striving for excellence, where you're improving every single day. So the next time you're feeling a little bit under pressure, remember you earn this. So try to fully embrace it. The 7th rule is all about the power of negative visualization. In almost every area of our life, an uncomfortable conversation today leads to a far more comfortable life in the future. But the truth is, this is far easier said than done. Many of us won't bother adopting healthy habits such as regular exercise and eating well until our well-being is pretty much in jeopardy. We won't bother fixing our car until it's on the verge of breaking down, and we won't bother fixing our roof until it starts leaking inside our house. We wait until pretty much the very last minute to do anything about it, which makes us feel more stressed and more uncomfortable later down the road. So this is where the power of negative visualization comes in. Instead of waiting for disaster to strike, we flip the script. We imagine the worst case scenario of everything in vivid technicolor detail. Like we imagine ourselves standing beside the road waiting for the mechanic to arrive. We imagine ourselves sitting in the living room watching a cascade of water come into the house. We just picture the worst case scenario of every area of our life. Now, I won't lie, this does actually sound kind of depressing, but by imagining the worst and engaging in this mental pre-mortem, we actually become super emotionally invested in preventing it. In fact, in a brilliant 1989 study, they put this concept to the test. So they got a group of people and split them into 2 groups. They asked the first group to use the pre-mortem technique to imagine a bunch of different scenarios like launching a business or planning a party as if they had already gone south. And then they asked the second group to imagine those same scenarios without using that same pre-mortem technique. They eventually found that the pre-mortem group were far better at predicting what could potentially go wrong in each of those scenarios and finding different ways from preventing those things from happening. In short then, the takeaway here is that we can use the power of negative visualization to make smarter decisions and also to prevent potential pitfalls from happening. Number 8, your skills are worthless, but your context is valuable. And the idea here is that different markets will put different values on your skills. The skills themselves have no intrinsic value. If an employer or a client sees our skills as particularly unique or rare, they're going to be willing to pay more for those skills compared to an employer or a client in a different industry where those skills are more common. You see, context is key. we can significantly boost our earning potential by offering the same skills to a different industry. Perhaps the starkest example of how context provides the perception of value can be found in a social experiment from the Washington Post in 2007. Basically, on one January morning, Joshua Bell, who was this world-renowned violinist, decided to dress up in ordinary clothes. He disguised himself as a street performer and played in the Washington DC subway station. He played for 45 minutes, performing 6 classical pieces on his $3.5 million Stradivarius violin. Despite his immense skill, talent, and the beautiful music that he played, out of all the thousands of people that passed him throughout the experiment, only 7 people stopped for longer than a minute to listen to him play, and he earned a total of $52.17, which is a huge contrast to the thousands of dollars he normally makes when performing in concert halls across the world. This story highlights how often people overlook value in certain contexts, raising questions about how good we really are at appreciating and rewarding talent in our daily lives. The skill here was exactly the same, but the context meant this guy earned vastly different sums of money. Finally, you're going to die. There are many things that our mind is just incapable of truly grasping. One of these things is how insignificant we really are. Life at every touch point is capable of seducing us into overestimating the importance of pretty much everything. And the second thing is that one day this life will come to an end. Yes, logically, we know that death is a thing. We've seen it happen to animals, we've seen it happen to relatives, we've seen it happen to other people. But if we just take a closer look at the things that we preoccupy ourselves with, the way that we treat other people, the way that we hoard possessions, and the way that we worry, we'll see that we both overestimated our own importance and at some deeper level seem to believe that we're going to live forever. Our innate assumption that life is just going to continue forever likely evolved as a psychological mechanism to alleviate anxiety, helping us with forward thinking and also to ensure the survival of our species. But by acknowledging our finite nature, we can prioritize what matters, shed what doesn't, and foster that calm sense of urgency that allows us to live more fully, more authentically, and in line with our most important values. So you're going to die, and in a distracted, noisy, complex modern world, this truth is therapeutic, liberating, and a wonderful way to focus in on another important truth, and that is that your time and the way you spend it is the only influence you have on the world.